Here on Walking the Way, we remind each other what Christ already taught us to love God and love your neighbor as ourselves. Sometimes that love looks like endurance, trusting that even when everything familiar falls apart, God is still rebuilding behind the scenes. But Scripture, it can be difficult to relate to. Sometimes it's even confusing when you try and bring it into your own life. To help, I've created the four witnesses, characters I've created to bring Scripture into a modern focus. You're about to hear from one of the witnesses, Olivia, the wayfarer, whose faith is strong, but life and walking with him sometimes wears her down. You might relate to her story. Here it is.
The whistle of the kettle gave me a little comfort most mornings, a sound that let me pretend things were normal. I'd line up 3 cups on the counter, one for me, one for Freddie, one for Hank. Even as I poured, I knew I'd be the only one to sit down. I remember how laughter used to fill our kitchen, how Freddie would crack jokes until milk came out of his nose, and Hank, a mess of elbows and grins, would sneak his phone under the table but still join in the teasing. Now, the conversations were polite, not warm. On the worst days, silence replaced even politeness. I kept pouring tea because it was something to hold, something to do when the warmth between us had thinned to a fragile thread. One morning, my Bible slipped open to First Peter 5. My eyes landed on verse 10. After you have suffered a little while, the God of all grace will restore, confirm, strengthen, and establish you. I read those words again and again, feeling their weight in my chest. I'd always thought it was my job to fix what was broken, to patch the cracks, to hold the pieces together for all of us. But for the first time, I wondered if God was asking me, instead, to let Him do the restoring, to rebuild not just our family, but my own broken heart. That morning, something gave way inside me, not a victory or a solution, but a shift. I stopped begging God to take me back to what we had before and started praying for something deeper, something new, something only He could build. Most days, I still pour 3 cups of tea and still sit alone, but I can feel the smallest beginnings of hope. Maybe God isn't finished with us yet. Maybe the God of all grace is already at work, restoring me even while the kitchen is quiet.
That's Olivia's story. And there's a kind of suffering that leaves you doubting whether you'll ever feel steady again. But First Peter 5:10 is a four-part promise for every person standing in the rubble of what once was. Restore. God will rebuild what loss tore apart. Confirm. He will steady what grief has shaken. Strength. He will give you the courage to love again. Establish. He will set you in a new foundation that cannot be taken away.